Long before the glittering courts of medieval Europe and the rise of the Knights Templar, a dynasty of long-haired kings ruled over what would eventually become France. The Merovingians, named after their semi-legendary founder Merovec, governed the Frankish territories from approximately 481 to 751 CE. While their historical significance as the first major post-Roman power in Western Europe is well established, a more mysterious narrative has emerged over centuries. One that places this dynasty at the center of profound esoteric secrets and spiritual knowledge that supposedly predates much of what we understand about early Christianity. The Merovingians stand at a fascinating historical crossroads, emerging from the shadows of Rome's collapse, embracing Christianity while allegedly maintaining older, hidden traditions, and eventually falling to political machinations that would reshape European power structures. Their legacy exists in a liminal space between documented history and elaborate speculation, between Orthodox Christianity and whispered heterodoxy, between political pragmatism and spiritual mysticism. This exploration delves into both the historical reality of the Merovingian dynasty and the esoteric claims that have surrounded them, particularly in modern times. By examining their actual religious practices, political structures, and cultural significance, alongside the theories that connect them to hidden bloodlines and ancient wisdom, we may better understand how this early medieval dynasty became a focal point for some of history's most enduring mysteries. The historical Merovingian dynasty emerged during the turbulent period following the collapse of Roman authority in Gaul. The dynasty takes its name from Merovec, a semi-mythical figure said to have led the Salian Franks in the mid-5th century. According to legend, Merovec was conceived when his mother, already pregnant by King Clodio, went swimming in the ocean and encountered a sea creature, possibly a Kinotaur, that impregnated her a second time. This dual paternity supposedly gave Merovec and his descendants special powers and divine right to rule. While this origin story belongs more to myth than history, it highlights the mystical qualities attributed to the Merovingian bloodline from its earliest days. The dynasty's true historical importance begins with Merovec's grandson, Clovis I, reigned 481 to 511 CE, who unified the Frankish tribes and conquered most of Gaul, establishing what would become the largest post-Roman kingdom in Western Europe. Clovis's conversion to Catholic Christianity around 496 CE marked a pivotal moment in European history. According to Gregory of Tours, Clovis invoked the Christian God during a desperate battle against the Alemanni, promising to convert if granted victory. Though his conversion may have been politically motivated, aligning him with the Gallo-Roman population and gaining papal support against the Arian Christian Visigoths, it established the Frankish kingdom as a defender of Catholic orthodoxy. However, as noted by historians, Clovis's conversion had significant historical impact, but seems to have had very little personal impact. Clovis and his forces were still quite willing to use treachery and brutality to defeat any opposition. This duality, public Christian piety alongside ruthless political pragmatism, would become a hallmark of Merovingian rule. Following Merovingian custom, Clovis's kingdom was divided among his 4 sons upon his death in 511 CE. This partitioning, which would be repeated in subsequent generations, led to constant infighting that weakened the dynasty. The Merovingian territories were generally divided into 3 main regions. The period following Clovis's death was marked by brutal civil wars, familial assassinations, and power struggles. Most notorious was the feud between Queens Brunhilde and Fredegund, which lasted decades and involved multiple murders, including that of King Sigibert I in 575 CE. The Merovingians developed several distinctive cultural practices. Most famous was their long hair, which became a symbol of their royal power and divine right to rule. As the World History Encyclopedia notes, the Merovingians, often referred to as long-haired kings, distinguished themselves from other Franks by keeping their hair long, and long hair soon became a symbol of their right to rule. A common way for Merovingians to dispose of rivals was to have them tonsured and sent off to a monastery, since cutting a king's hair symbolically stripped him of his power and right to the throne. Other distinctive practices included the ritual of raising new kings on shields, a Germanic tradition symbolizing their elevation to leadership, and the consistent use of certain royal names like Chilperic and Clovis to foster a sense of dynastic continuity. By the 7th century, Merovingian power was in decline. Real authority increasingly fell to the aristocracy and particularly to the mayors of the palace, chief officers of the royal household who came to control military and administrative functions. The last powerful Merovingian king was Dagobert I, r. 623 to 6639, after whom the dynasty's monarchs became increasingly ceremonial figures, the infamous do-nothing kings, Roisvanians. The final Merovingian king, Childeric III, was deposed in 751 by Pepin the Short, mayor of the palace, with the blessing of Pope Zachary. This ended the Merovingian dynasty and inaugurated the Carolingian dynasty, which would reach its apex under Charlemagne. Childeric was tonsured and sent to a monastery, a symbolic act that forever severed the long-haired kings from their power. The historical Merovingians were undoubtedly significant as the first major post-Roman dynasty in Western Europe. However, a parallel narrative has developed over centuries, placing them at the center of esoteric traditions and spiritual secrets. These claims gained widespread attention through works like The Holy Blood and the Holy Grail, 1982, and later through Dan Brown's fictional bestseller, The Da Vinci Code, 2003. The most controversial claim regarding the Merovingians is that they descended from Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene. According to this theory, Jesus did not die on the cross but survived, or alternatively, Mary Magdalene was pregnant at the time of the crucifixion. She then fled to what is now southern France, where she gave birth to a child who became the ancestor of the Merovingian line. As one source states, Jesus Christ did not die on Calvary, but merely pretended to die. He was taken from the cross, stolen from the tomb, and was believed to have married Mary Magdalene and even produced children. They claim that when the Romans destroyed the temple at Jerusalem in 70 AD, the Magdalene fled with her sacred children by boat across the Mediterranean to France, and there she found refuge in Jewish community. This theory connects the Merovingians to early Christianity in a radically different way than the historical conversion of Clovis. Rather than merely adopting the faith, they would be blood descendants of its founder, carrying both his physical lineage and potentially his secret teachings. In this esoteric framework, the Holy Grail itself is reinterpreted. Rather than being a literal cup from the Last Supper, or that caught Christ's blood at the crucifixion, the Grail becomes a symbol for Mary Magdalene's womb and the bloodline she supposedly carried. As described in one source, according to them, the legendary Holy Grail is simultaneously the womb of Saint Mary Magdalene and the sacred royal bloodline she gave birth to. And the Church tried to kill off all remnants of this bloodline and their supposed guardians, the Cathars and the Templars, in order for popes to hold the episcopal throne through the apostolic succession without fear of it ever being usurped by an anti-pope from the hereditary succession of Mary Magdalene. This reinterpretation connects the Merovingians not only to Jesus, but to one of Christianity's most enduring mystical symbols, suggesting they were the living embodiment of the Grail, rather than merely seekers of it. According to some theories, a secret society called the Priory of Sion has protected the Merovingian bloodline and its secrets for centuries. The Priory supposedly created the Knights Templar as its military arm, and its alleged Grand Masters included luminaries like Leonardo da Vinci and Isaac Newton. The purported goals of this organization include revealing the tomb of Sigebert IV and the lost temple treasure, reinstating the Merovingian dynasty in France, establishing a United States of Europe with a Merovingian monarch as both secular and religious leader. These claims suggest that the Merovingian legacy never truly ended, but went underground, protected by generations of initiates awaiting the proper time for restoration. The Merovingians are claimed to have possessed special spiritual powers and knowledge. They were said to have had healing abilities, particularly the power to cure scrofula, the king's touch, later claimed by French and English monarchs, and clairvoyant powers. Additionally, they allegedly bore a distinctive birthmark, a small red cross above the heart, that identified them as special bloodline members. This physical sign supposedly connected them to both their mystical heritage and to the later symbol adopted by the Knights Templar. The esoteric claims surrounding the Merovingians have captured popular imagination, but they require critical examination against historical evidence. The most significant issue with these esoteric claims is the lack of contemporary historical evidence. No Merovingian texts or artifacts suggest they claimed descent from Jesus or possessed secret knowledge beyond their contemporaries. The earliest suggestions of such connections emerged centuries after their fall from power. As one historian notes, while the Merovingian kings claimed divine support for their dynasty, there is no historical record of them claiming to be of the bloodline of Jesus Christ. Their claims to divine right were similar to those of many ancient and medieval dynasties, drawing on mythological or supernatural origins, but not specifically Christian bloodlines. Much of the modern narrative about Merovingian esoteric connections stems from documents created by Pierre Plantard in the mid-20th century. Plantard fabricated the Priory of Sion and created false genealogies connecting himself to the Merovingian line. The entire setup was an elaborate hoax that perpetuated until the late 1990s, when the entire fraud was brought to light. Not before, however. Several historians, fiction writers, and even 60 Minutes were dragged into strengthening this mythology. Even Plantard himself eventually admitted the fabrication, stating in a 1982 radio interview, "I admit that the Sacred Enigma, French title for the Holy Blood and the Holy Grail, is a good book, but one must say that there is a part that owes more to fiction than to fact, especially in the part that deals with the lineage of Jesus. How can you prove a lineage of 4 centuries from Jesus to the Merovingians? I have never put myself forward as a descendant of Jesus Christ." Despite the lack of historical evidence, these esoteric narratives hold powerful appeal. They connect to perennial human interests in hidden knowledge, alternative religious histories, and the idea that current power structures might be built on suppressed truths. As historian Richard Barber observed, the Holy Blood and the Holy Grail is the most notorious of all the Grail pseudo-histories, which proceeds by innuendo, not by refutable scholarly debate. Yet its approach resonates with readers seeking alternative explanations to mainstream historical and religious narratives. While the more sensational, esoteric claims lack historical foundation, the Merovingians did exist at a fascinating spiritual crossroads that merits examination. The Merovingian dynasty emerged during a transitional period when Germanic paganism was giving way to Christianity in Western Europe. Clovis's conversion was politically significant, but did not represent an immediate cultural transformation. Early Merovingian practice likely combined Christian elements with older Germanic traditions, creating a syncretic religious environment. Archaeological evidence from Merovingian tombs shows this blending, with Christian symbols appearing alongside traditional Germanic grave goods. This religious syncretism, rather than secret Gnostic knowledge, may explain some of the distinctive spiritual practices associated with the dynasty. The Merovingians embraced concepts of sacred kingship that had roots in both Germanic tradition and Roman imperial cult. Their long hair symbolized not just royal power, but a connection to the divine, a form of charismatic authority that set them apart from ordinary men. This sacralization of kingship would develop further under their Carolingian successors, but began with Merovingian practices. Their alleged healing powers, while probably exaggerated, reflect early medieval beliefs about royal blood carrying spiritual potency. The Merovingians maintained a complex relationship with the Catholic Church. While officially supportive after Clovis's conversion, they frequently treated church offices as political appointments and used ecclesiastical resources for secular purposes. They founded numerous monasteries and churches throughout their territories, creating centers of learning and spiritual practice that would preserve classical knowledge through the early Middle Ages. However, they also placed family members in key church positions and controlled ecclesiastical wealth and lands, creating tensions with Rome that would eventually contribute to papal support for the Carolingian usurpation. The Merovingian dynasty's legacy extends far beyond their historical rule, influencing both genuine historical developments and popular culture. Historically, the Merovingians established patterns of governance that would shape medieval European kingdoms for centuries. They created a framework for the feudal system that would develop under their Carolingian successors, established the Frankish kingdom that would evolve into France, and positioned the Catholic Church as a central institution in Western European society. Their fusion of Roman administrative structures with Germanic tribal traditions created a distinctive political culture that would define early medieval Europe. The Merovingian era also saw the preservation of elements of classical learning through monastic institutions they supported, contributing to what would later be termed the Carolingian Renaissance. In literature and popular culture, the Merovingians have become symbols of hidden knowledge and alternative histories. Beyond the Holy Blood and the Holy Grail and the Da Vinci Code, they have appeared in numerous works exploring esoteric themes. In the Matrix film trilogy, a character called the Merovingian is portrayed as an old, powerful program who trades in information and holds knowledge about the system's earliest days. Various fantasy and historical fiction works depict them as keepers of ancient magical traditions predating Christianity. Alternative history theories continue to connect them to everything from ancient Egyptian mysteries to extraterrestrial influence. These fictional representations, while historically inaccurate, speak to the dynasty's enduring power as a symbol of hidden knowledge and suppressed traditions. Recent archaeological work continues to expand our understanding of the historical Merovingians. Excavations of royal burial sites, analysis of administrative documents, and study of artistic and architectural remains provide increasingly detailed pictures of their actual governance and culture. Contemporary scholarship generally rejects the more sensational, esoteric claims, while acknowledging the genuine spiritual dimensions of Merovingian rule. Their position at the transition between late antiquity and the early Middle Ages, between paganism and Christianity, and between Roman and Germanic traditions makes them crucial for understanding how European civilization developed after Rome's fall. The Merovingian dynasty stands as a fascinating example of how historical reality and mythological narrative can intertwine over centuries. The actual Merovingian kings, from Clovis I to Childeric III, ruled a significant post-Roman kingdom that laid foundations for medieval European civilization. Their adoption of Christianity, administrative innovations, and cultural developments had lasting impacts on Western Europe. The esoteric narratives that connect them to Jesus' bloodline, the Holy Grail, and secret Gnostic knowledge may lack historical evidence but reveal important truths about human spiritual longing. These stories speak to our desire for hidden connections, suppressed knowledge, and alternative explanations for religious and political power structures. Perhaps the most authentic secret of the Merovingians is how they navigated a world in profound transition, between Roman and medieval, between pagan and Christian, between tribal and imperial. Their ability to synthesize these opposing forces created a distinctive cultural and spiritual approach that genuinely influenced European development. In exploring both the historical reality and mythological elaborations of the Merovingian dynasty, we gain insight not just into an early medieval kingdom, but into how societies create meaning from their past. The long-haired kings may not have carried Jesus' blood or hidden Gnostic gospels, but they did help shape a civilization emerging from antiquity's collapse. Their enduring fascination speaks to how powerfully this formative period continues to influence our spiritual and historical imagination today. The true legacy of the Merovingians lies not in speculative bloodlines, but in their actual historical position at a crucial turning point in Western civilization, a legacy that continues to inspire both scholarly inquiry and creative reimagining 13 centuries after their fall from power.